Welcome back to the deep dive.
Good to be talking about this today.
Yeah, absolutely. So our mission today, it's really laser focused. We are
Classic.
cutting straight through, decades of confusing health data, stuff that's often been very male-centric.
That's the core issue, isn't it?
And we want to give you, the listener, the actionable, science-backed roadmap for female strength, health, and, well, longevity.
But we're not just talking about dieting.
No, definitely not. This is bigger. It's really about survival.
And those are exactly the stakes we have to acknowledge, you know.
Yeah.
For too long, the measure of health for women,
Mm.
it's just been about aesthetics.
The whole be small at any cost idea.
Exactly.
Mhm.
Or I'm thin, so I must be healthy. And that mindset, it's led us straight into an epidemic of frailty.
And the statistics our sources pulled together, they are frankly terrifying when you look at the consequences of focusing just on aesthetics.
They really are.
We're talking 40 to 50% of women eventually facing low bone density.
And it gets worse. 70% of all hip fractures, they happen in women.
70%, that's huge.
It is. And that hip fracture, it isn't just about pain or being laid up for a while.
No,
It carries a 30% risk of mortality within just 1 year.
30%, wow.
So this means the conversation has to fundamentally shift. The goal can't be about fitting into a certain size anymore.
Right, it needs to be about
Building strength,
going.
building muscle,
Yeah.
actively fighting osteoporosis, frailty, and down the line, even dementia.
Okay, let's unpack this shift then, because the message isn't just, move your body more.
Yeah.
It's about seeing muscle as this non-negotiable metabolic organ, not just for walking or lifting things.
Exactly right. Muscle is an endocrine organ. It's constantly communicating, cross-talking with your brain, with your bones.
Okay, how does that work? With the brain, for instance.
Well, building and actually using your muscle helps the brain produce more neurons, BDNF, things like that.
Mm.
And if you're dealing with chronic inflammatory conditions, maybe PCOS or endometriosis, muscle mass is critical
Why specifically for those?
because it's one of the best tools you have to fight insulin resistance and that underlying systemic inflammation. Muscle just soaks up glucose.
Okay, so if muscle is the engine here, that completely changes the goalpost. We're not just talking lose weight,
No, forget just losing weight. Think recomposition.
recomposition, meaning.
Building lean mass while reducing body fat. We have to tackle that skinny fat idea.
Ah, yes. It was a person with a normal BMI, but
Maybe 40, even 50% body fat. They might look slim, but metabolically,
they're not healthy.
it's a huge indicator of poor metabolic health, whatever the scale says.
Mm.
The scale can be really misleading if you ignore body composition.
Okay.
And what's really fascinating, or maybe alarming, is how muscle loss speeds things up when women hit perimenopause.
Because bone and muscle are linked.
They're always talking to each other, like
Yeah.
endocrine organs do.
And when estrogen drops, that conversation breaks down.
Precisely. Estrogen is a really potent anti-inflammatory. So when it starts to decline in perimenopause, the rate of bone decline just accelerates. It doubles, sometimes triples. Our sources show women can lose 15, maybe 20% of their total bone density just from that estrogen loss.
Wow. So building those reserves beforehand is critical.
Absolutely essential. You have to establish muscle and bone reserves in advance.
Okay, wait. So you're saying when I'm lifting weights, I'm literally sending signals, like molecules, telling my brain and my bones get stronger.
That's essentially it. It's powerful signaling.
That is powerful. Okay, if that's the metabolic need, what does the exercise strategy actually look like? It sounds like it needs to involve heavy load,
Resistance training. That has to be the core of the plan, period.
regardless of life stage.
Absolutely. Whether you're cycling normally, pregnant, going through fertility treatments, consistency in building and using muscle is paramount.
Okay, this brings up a really important point because we need to talk about things like Pilates and yoga. They're super popular.
They're great for core strength, balance, proprioception. Excellent for those things.
But are they enough? Enough to prevent those hip fractures we started with?
No, they are not strength training in the way we mean it for building serious bone density.
Why not? What's missing?
To stimulate the bone cell of the osteocytes, you need heavy, multi-directional load, force.
And Pilates is more endurance.
If you can lift your leg 100 times in Pilates, that's muscular endurance, absolutely. But it's not enough load. It lacks the sheer force needed to trigger that adaptive change in muscle and bones.
So if someone only does Pilates or yoga,
They're neglecting the primary tool they have to prevent frailty later in life. It's a supplement, not the main course for bone health.
Okay, this is where it gets really interesting and maybe a bit controversial for some listeners.
Uh-huh.
We have to look critically at that habit of, moderate intensity exercise, going to that spin class or boot camp 5, 6, even 7 days a week.
The go hard-ish all the time approach.
Wait, are the sources actually saying my favorite cycling class might be counterproductive? That just feels wrong.
It often is, especially long-term. It's the cortisol trap.
Cortisol trap, explain.
That moderate sort of mid-range intensity, it keeps systemic inflammation simmering. It keeps your cortisol chronically elevated.
Especially as women lose estrogen.
Exactly. Estrogen is anti-inflammatory. Lose that buffer, and that constant mid-level stress hits harder. It's intense enough to make recovery difficult.
Yeah, you feel wiped out.
But it's often not intense enough to truly change your physiology in a positive way.
Yeah.
You end up potentially hurt, definitely exhausted, and scald on actually changing your body composition.
So instead of living in the middle, the goal is polarization.
Polarization. Hit the extremes, go really high intensity for the stimulus, then focus on very low intensity for active recovery.
Okay, high intensity. Why is that the key?
High intensity, we're talking short bursts.
Yeah.
Zone 5 or 6 effort that provides the essential adaptive stress, the good kind of stress.
What does it trigger?
Growth hormone, testosterone responses. It drastically reduces insulin resistance. But maybe the most critical mechanism, especially for women's health, is that peak intensity generates lactate.
Lactate. Okay, I thought that was just the stuff that makes your muscles burn.
That's the old view. Lactate isn't just waste. It's a critical signaling molecule. And it's actually a superfuel, particularly for the brain.
Really? How does that work? How does lactate protect my brain from something like Alzheimer's?
When you exercise at that peak intensity, your muscles produce lactate. Then your body ships it straight up to the brain.
And the brain uses it?
The brain loves it.
Yeah.
It uses it directly as fuel. And it encourages the production of new neurons, things like BDNF, since women are disproportionately affected by dementia and Alzheimer's.
Right.
Using these short bursts of peak intensity is one of the most protective things you can proactively do for your long-term cognitive health.
That completely reframes intensity. So an example might be sprint interval training.
Perfect example. Like 30 seconds, absolutely max effort. Go all out.
Then
Complete recovery. And I mean complete 2, maybe 3 minutes of just walking or standing. Then repeat that maybe 4 times total.
So a powerful stimulus in less than 15 minutes.
Exactly. Efficient and effective.
Okay, let's make this concrete. Give us an example routine for, say, a woman in her 30s or 40s reproductive years.
Okay, aim for maybe 3 dedicated gym days per week, focused on strength.
And how should that start?
You must start with about 10 minutes of targeted mobilization.
Okay, you used a technical term earlier, distending the joint capsules. Why can't I just do a quick quad stretch? What's the difference between mobilizing and just stretching?
Great question. Static stretching, holding stretch, often temporarily relaxes or even weakens the muscle.
Right.
That's not what you want right before you load it heavily.
Right.
Mobilization, maybe using gentle resistance bands and specific movements, is about actively improving your range of motion, creating space in the joint.
Why is that so important before lifting?
Think about it. If you walk into the gym with stiff ankles from sitting all day and tight hips, your squat depth will suffer. Your knee might cave in. Your glutes won't fire properly.
The whole kinetic chain is off.
Exactly. It leads to compensation, potentially injury. Mobilization ensures you can access your full, safe range of motion before you add load.
Okay, mobilization first. Check. Then the lifting part.
Pick one main compound movement per session. Think squats one day, a major upper body push or pull another day, maybe a posterior chain move like deadlifts on the third.
And the key is?
Lifting heavy. Heavy means roughly 70 to 80% of your 1 rep max. You should be reaching or very close to failure by about 5 reps.
Oh, if I can easily do 10 reps.
It's not heavy enough to optimally build bone or dense muscle. It's good, but not optimal for this specific goal.
And you mentioned impact too.
Yes. Absolutely crucial. You need to incorporate some form of jump training or impact plyometrics maybe after your main lift.
Yeah, jumping.
That vertical impact or multidirectional impact is what physically stimulates those osteocytes, the bone cells, telling them, hey, we need to be stronger. Lay down more bone matrix.
And this isn't just theory, right? There was a study.
Exactly, the Lift More trial. It showed women who already had osteoporosis could safely build bone density by lifting heavy progressive weights under supervision. It works.
That is so encouraging. It really flips the script on the fear many women have about lifting heavy weights. Okay, let's move into nuance. What about the menstrual cycle? Do women need to micromanage training around their phases?
The current thinking is moving away from strict mandates here
Why is that?
because women's cycles vary so much. Length, symptoms, even whether ovulation happens consistently. Many women don't track reliably anyway.
So trying to rigidly follow, say, only do cardio in your luteal phase.
It often leads to frustration and, honestly, less consistency overall. And consistency is really what builds adaptation over time.
Okay, so what's a more practical approach for the listener day to day?
Learn to listen to your body's signals. Honor your energy peaks. Generally speaking, women often feel strongest, most robust in that late follicular phase.
So roughly day 6 to 14 as estrogen is climbing.
That's typically the sweet spot. It's an intelligent time to maybe schedule your heaviest lifting sessions or those high-intensity intervals.
But what about ovulation itself? Or the luteal phase?
Ovulation can be variable.
Hmm.
Some feel great with that estrogen surge, others feel flat. Some even have pain Mittelschmerz.
Right.
You have to grant yourself grace on those flat days. Maybe swap a heavy lift for a walk, or just focus on technique with lighter weight, or do some low-intensity recovery work. Don't force it.
And let's quickly reframe this whole overtraining worry. A lot of women feel guilty taking rest days.
We really need to shift that language. For most women, especially those trying to balance work, family, life,
Yeah.
they are almost certainly not overtraining. They are under-recovering and very often under-fueling.
So focus on recovery and fuel first.
Optimize those, nail your sleep, get enough protein, and the fear of doing too much exercise often just melts away.
Okay, speaking of fuel, let's talk fueling strategies. Protein goals first.
We need significantly higher protein intake than the standard RDA, which is really just a baseline to prevent deficiency, not optimize health or build muscle.
So what number should we aim for?
The evidence points towards aiming for around 1.6 grams of protein per kilogram of body weight per day. Or an easier way to think about it is maybe 1 gram per pound of your ideal body weight.
And why so high?
To support active muscle protein synthesis, muscle growth, and really combat that slide towards frailty. Studies show higher protein intake directly correlates with the lowest frailty scores in older women.
Okay, protein is key. Now, fasting. This is a big one, and it seems like an area where women might be unintentionally harming their hormones.
It's a huge one. Extended fasting, things like multi-day water fasts, or even just routinely skipping breakfast and pushing food way back until noon or later.
Yeah, what's the problem?
It's often just too much of a stressor for the female body, especially consistently. The hypothalamus in the brain is very sensitive to low energy availability, low blood glucose,
And it registers that
as a famine state, a threat. So it flips the survival switch.
And what happens then? What are the consequences of that survival switch?
Well, it starts shutting down metabolically expensive processes, like the reproductive system.
Leading to low estrogen, irregular cycles.
Exactly. Menstrual dysfunction. But here's the paradox. While shutting down reproduction, it can also promote visceral fat, storage belly fat, and systemic inflammation. Your body thinks resources are scarce and prepares for the worst.
So you're basically forcing your body into a state of chronic stress with that kind of fasting.
For many women, yes, it backfires metabolically.
So what's the beneficial approach then? Is all fasting bad?
No, time-restricted eating, or TRE, seems to be the sweet spot because it works with our biology, not against it.
How does TRE work?
It aligns with your natural circadian rhythm. You consume your calories during the daytime when your body is biologically primed to handle glucose efficiently.
So eating when the sun's up, basically.
Pretty much. You make sure you get good protein, fiber, nutrients during your eating window, and then you incorporate a clean 12-hour fast overnight.
How long before bed should you stop eating?
Ideally, stop eating 2, maybe 3 hours before bed. This allows for metabolic benefits, helps autophagy overnight, but avoids that prolonged starvation signal. It supports hormone function and sleep quality.
Okay. And general nutrition composition, what should the plate look like?
Think plant-forward, high fiber, and deeply anti-inflammatory foods.
Why fiber specifically?
Fiber is crucial for feeding your gut microbiome, and a healthy gut is essential for metabolizing estrogen properly, getting rid of waste products.
And fats. Low fat is still pushed sometimes.
You absolutely need healthy fats. Olive oil, avocados, nuts, seeds. Cholesterol is the backbone molecule for all your steroid hormones. Estrogen, progesterone, testosterone, cortisol.
So if you cut fat too low,
You're basically starving your body of the raw materials it needs to make hormones. Don't fear healthy fats.
right. Okay, we've built the muscle, we've fueled the machine, but none of it works if the foundation is cracked. Let's talk pillars of health, starting with sleep.
Sleep. It's utterly non-negotiable. It's the ultimate recovery tool.
Why is it so fundamental?
If you start your day in a sleep deficit, you're already behind the 8 ball. You wake up stressed, inflamed, more insulin resistant.
And you can't just exercise or eat your way out of bad sleep.
Absolutely not. That deficit sets a negative tone for the entire day physiologically. We need to aim for 7 to 9 hours of quality sleep per night.
And you mentioned something specific for women in midlife regarding sleep assessment.
Yes, this is critical and often missed. Women in midlife, perimenopause, and beyond need to be assessed for sleep apnea.
Doesn't that usually present with loud snoring, mostly in men?
That's the stereotype, but it presents much more quietly in women. Maybe fatigue, morning headaches, trouble concentrating, but the oxygen deprivation it causes.
What does that lead to?
It heavily contributes to higher rates of cognitive decline, Alzheimer's risk, and metabolic problems like insulin resistance and hypertension. If you're doing everything else right but still exhausted, ask your doctor about a sleep apnea evaluation.
Good advice. Okay, next pillar. Chronic stress. A silent killer, especially, it seems, for women in caregiving roles.
It really is. Chronic modern stress, not like the acute stress of running from a tiger, keeps cortisol perpetually high.
And that damages
Those metabolic pathways we've been talking about. It promotes fat storage, increases inflammation, disrupts hormones. And we have to acknowledge the unique burden women often carry.
the caregiving load.
Yes, looking after children, partners, aging parents. One study cited found that acting as a caregiver for a parent with dementia actually increased the caregiver's own risk of death by 60%.
60% just from the stress.
Largely due to the chronic stress load. We need active, serious stress mitigation strategies, not just suggesting bubble baths. It needs to be prioritized.
Okay, final pillar. Looking outside the body now at environmental toxins, the endocrine disruptors, EDCs.
These are pervasive chemicals, things like BPA in plastics, phthalates in cosmetics, chemicals on thermal paper receipts.
And they act like
They act as another layer of chronic stress on the body. They induce inflammation, and crucially, they interfere directly with our hormone function.
how so?
They can mimic hormones, block them, disrupt their production. We know BPA exposure, for example, is linked to things like lower ovarian reserve and potentially earlier menopause.
Wow. It feels overwhelming, like toxins are everywhere.
They are widespread, but the good news is we can make simple, controllable changes that add up.
Like what? Give us some actionable steps.
Filter your drinking water. Use glass containers, especially for heating food, instead of plastic. Avoid non-stick cookware if it's scratched. And just say no to thermal paper receipts whenever possible.
Small things, but they reduce the overall load.
Exactly. It's about lowering your cumulative inflammatory burden from sources you can control.
Okay, so we've covered a massive amount, lifting heavy, polarization, fueling, sleep, stress, toxins. What is the final, most crucial takeaway for the listener from this deep dive?
I think it's about being proactive, especially during what some call the critical decade.
Which is when?
Roughly estimated between age 35 and 45, this is really the prime time to establish those strong, heavy lifting habits, to build up your bone and muscle reserves while your estrogen levels are still relatively robust and working for you.
It's not impossible later, but it's harder.
It's never too late to start, ever. But the work is definitely easier, and you build a better buffer when you have that hormonal support still on your side. Start now or start yesterday if you can.
Which brings us to maybe the ultimate mind shift needed here. What's the provocative thought you want to leave our listeners with to navigate this journey towards powerful aging?
You absolutely must become the CEO of your own healthcare.
CEO of your own healthcare. Explain that.
The traditional medical system. Historically, it just wasn't designed to proactively serve the aging woman, particularly after her reproductive years are perceived to be over.
So you can't just rely on standard checkups.
Not if you want to age powerfully and actively prevent frailty, cognitive decline, and loss of independence. You have to educate yourself. You have to advocate fiercely for your needs.
And take up space?
Yes.
Yeah.
Actively push back against those pervasive societal pressures that still tell women to be small, to be thin, to fade away quietly. It is time to demand health, strength, and, frankly, power in your later years. And that self-education starts right now.